happen to you. And I think that's disguising victim blaming and trying to say, oh, well, you thought bad luck would happen, so look, you brought bad luck into your life. And I think that's bullshit. And that it's actually the theory of attraction, and it's the law of frequent occurrences that was really what they're trying to say. But in terms of catcalling, I mean, it's always the love that you want you can't have, and the love you have you don't want kind of situation. I guess that people fall into that a bunch.
We're cats, basically, is what you're saying.
No, cats are cute and adorable.
Yeah.
Men are not that.
Some unwarranted advances I've had, I actually tell people.
I'm pretty cute and adorable. I hate the word cute, but I'm adorable.
I'll second that.
Thank you.
I'll third that.
I'm blushing. I'm blushing. I'm glad the camera's off.
Going back to what I was saying before about what?
Sorry, be forewarned. I will flirt with anyone who will let me. It's just, you know what I mean? So, yeah.
It's very easy to make me blush. I just want to put that out there. I'm glad the camera's off.
Gotcha.
Going back to, when I was saying how we all experience prejudice, that's probably one of the biggest factors in my prejudice. Every fucking day of my life that I walk to and from every single day.
Guys, we're getting a unique Cynthia right here. We rarely get this Cynthia.
it's always the same type of people. And it makes me so fucking mad that I can't legally do anything about it. Like, I wish I could pepper spray them, but apparently it's like battery.
We're talking colors.
Let's try to tone down the profanity just a little bit, so like YouTube doesn't flag the educational video for content.
I don't think they flag videos for cussing.
Only like in the first 30 or so seconds, we may be past the 30-second mark in a new recording, so you might be good.
After all this work that I've been doing not to curse this whole time.
Oh, they'll just put like a little like disclaimer underneath the video that said this video is approved for like mature audiences only. There's like a whole like adult please there's a whole thing for that.
Well, there's more than that, but I think we're good if it's not in the first 30 seconds.
Well, let me get holier than thou and say that I have no profanity in my vocabulary. Yay, me.
That's true.
Wow.
That is true.
You never stub your toe? I do.
No, I don't.
Yeah, what do you do? Yeah, Ish, what do you do if you stub your toe?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
It's like F.
No. F. No, it's not. It's not one of my resort phrases.
Oh,
what do you say?
I curse in Spanish. No, then only half the people can understand me.
I curse.
You've cursed before.
No, I haven't.
I curse in German. So.
I usually say something in German, but it's usually not. It's not profanity. No, I haven't, Cynthia.
George Bush.
Really?
Donald
I
Trump.
just assume everyone has.
Donald Trump. That's probably a good one.
I'm sure it's a curse now.
Video.
Sure. It is for a lot of people, unfortunately.
It's only a curse to us, though, here in the States.
Well, and to a lot of people who were sent back to.
Oh yeah, of course.
And it's not even that I stub my toe. I usually stub my toe. I have all these high-end comic book boxes, like they're hard plastic, made by BCW. And like they're all over one of my rooms, and I'll walk in and the lights will be out, and I'll stub my toe in such a way that it lifts my toenail.
I hate when that happens.
And I find myself doing it all the time, right? And I'm like, oh, good.
Have you ever lost
stepping on Legos?
Have you ever taken a toenail off that way?
No.
Oh, it feels like
somehow that's almost worse.
It's worse because the pain continues, right? And I know all these breathing techniques for martial arts, so I know a lot of times you can just kind of breathe away. It'll subside the pain if you do breathing techniques.
So you just have to rub it.
When you do the toe, it never works.
Thank you.
When you do the toe like that, it never works.
I'm not thinking about that.
Are any of the breathing techniques similar to the what are they called? The baby breathing techniques?
Lama?
Yeah, Lamaze. All right,
Lamaze?
similar to Lamaze.
I would imagine so. I've never sat in on Lamaze or had to experience Lamaze myself, so I just know that, you know, if you like slow down and start taking deep focused breaths, you can certainly mitigate pain.
Okay.
Does it
No way.
eliminate
Makes
pain?
sense.
It mitigates pain because it's just about the flow of blood and oxygen.
That's so
Ish,
much
quick-
self-control.
Quick question: What type of martial arts did you study?
So for 10 years, I studied 5 animal fist kung fu, and then
Nice.
I transitioned into jujitsu.
I was an Aikido student.
Oh, awesome,
Wow.
awesome.
I took
Awesome.
Taekwondo.
Yeah, I used to teach Taekwondo as a junior.
Oh, nice.
Oh,
Well, that's
Wow.
awesome. That's
I
awesome.
took one Taekwondo class.
Oh, yeah.
I took
Yeah, I
ballet.
transitioned into jujitsu because
What happened,
I
Cynthia?
wanted-
Did they kick you out for being too fierce?
No, I was 15 at the time, and the guy told me to keep punching his chest. I'm like, I don't want to hurt you. He's like, you won't hurt me.
That's
I'm
unorthodox.
like, no, I don't want to hurt you.
That's a strange class.
I should continue. That would have taught me a lot of like self-defense training. But I also hear
Taekwondo.
I'm
With all
sorry,
these cat collars.
I'm sorry, Ish. I did not mean to cut you off. Please.
Oh, it's fine.
continue.
Oh, Taekwondo is a leg form. So for me, what happened was, like, you know, 5 animal fist is so specialized, right? And it's designed like you. So 5 animal fist, you're talking 5 animals, right? But you're not going to learn all 5 because, like, you're obviously tiger style kung fu is, you know, bigger people are going to be more proficient at that, right? Crane, for instance, you know, the best crane fighters are dancers. You understand what I'm saying? Or people who have that type of coordination. You know what I mean? You know, I focused on snake style and panther fist. However, because it's so specialized in the modern era, the you know, an average practitioner of MMA for 6 months, you know, someone who just takes MMA for 6 months has a significant advantage. So I transitioned into jujitsu just to have a ground game.
Yeah.
Just to be, you know, so many fights go to ground. You understand what I'm saying? And at my size, you know, and when I'm in peak physical condition, I'm anywhere from 147 to 152 pounds.
Oh,
So
nice. That's my weight.
Are you serious?
That's
Wait,
so
Ish, how tall are
specific.
you?
6 foot. Well, because I'm a personal trainer, so I train. So my weight, you know, what at one, if I'm down to like, you know, 7% body fat, I'm at 147 pounds.
Ish, we're the same. I'm 6'1", 155.
Right. And that's probably your natural fit weight, meaning what your body chooses, what your body has chosen as a natural, comfortable weight while maintaining, you know, some level of fitness. You
I
see what I'm
hate you
saying?
both for being skinnier than me. By the way, I just wanted to mention.
Eggplant water.
Mm.
If you soak eggplant water, you know, not to be used too frequently, but there's like chlorogenic acids and a few things that interrupt the absorption of fat, specifically in your stomach. If you use it sparingly, look it up.
Yeah, I will, Damien. Thank you.
Yep.
But you know, you gotta be careful because if you use it past the 2-3 week limit, it could start to affect your blood pressure. So
Yeah, your body has
that's
reactions to things like garlic, eggplant. It can have a reverse reaction if you have too much buildup.
Right.
See,
Even
I'm
wheatgrass.
just imagining a bad time in the bathroom after consuming too much of something. So-
Listen, at my house, look, I'm the youngest person in my house, and I'm already an old bastard, as you can tell. So it's always a bad time in the bathroom.
Oof.
That's funny.
That's the only, like, if I were taking Taekwondo, I would probably, actually, if I could do it over again, right, I would probably, because how MMA is kind of taking over things, a lot of people call the MMA community like a shortcut martial art. I don't call it a shortcut martial art. It's so effective, right? And, you know, you had a lot of videos that were coming out over the past couple of years where these, you know, 30, 40 masters, you know, in some cases it was disrespectful. There's one that came out of China where, like, this master just got beat up by this guy who'd taken MMA for like 2 years.
Yeah.
He just beat up this master, and they were, you know, everyone was kind of pissed because they felt like they disrespected, you know, a long-standing tradition and art form. But, you know, realistically, like, a lot of these MMA practitioners, it's the future. It's dangerous because you have a lot of young people who, again, in 6 months, You know what I mean? If you're really dedicating time to it, like in 6 months, you can become. You're not going to go into an octagon and win fights, but on the street, I often tell people like the average high school wrestler has a significant advantage over someone who just doesn't, have a regimented, fighting style. Just the average high school wrestler is in better shape. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah,
And they have this mentality that, so like for me, I wish I would have taken like just I would have traded, and I love that I'm proficient and took 10 years of kung fu, but I would have traded that for 10 years of say Thai fighting and jujitsu.
Striking hard and wrestling even better.
Right. You know what I mean? 10 years of kung fu was, I loved it. I loved the discipline that came with it, the whole nine. I realized, with the advent of MMA, right? For self-defense, if you're just, using it as a form of self-defense, on a street level, it's absolutely effective. But if you're dealing with somebody who just has a few months of MMA, you could find yourself in a bad position, which is why I wasn't really concerned with MMA, but I definitely went to a school that focused on MMA, and I just went for jujitsu.
It's there's a lot of what you're talking about is getting into adaptive self-defense, and something that like is overlooked too is offense is not really taught frequently in schools. Something like Sistema or some of the Russian martial arts that focus on an offense and
Krav Maga
example. But they take the art where your offense is your best defense, and you see that in the ring a lot. Why fighters like Kimbo Slice or Bas Rutten. Bas Rutten's a great example.
Yeah, Bas is awesome.
Of a fighter who never really had a big formal training background, but was able as like someone that was a bouncer at a bar who could
Tank Abbott.
He'll go dang-a-da, boom, leg kick, and that leg kick was the thing. He decommissioned fighters. People didn't even want to fight him at a certain point because he was a very specific 26 centimeter height kick just above your kneecap that disabled the opponents in ways where A, they're not running away if they even tried to, and B, they're not standing even if they want to. So at a certain point, self-defense comes down to simplicity. The simplest organism wins. And what I liked about Taekwondo was that when you get into the further reaches of it, it emphasizes speed and distance. And it says at a certain point, you're going to be outclassed with jiu-jitsu, even some moments with karate. So you need to learn how to use speed and distance as an advanced technique later on, or step into some other Korean martial arts like Taekyon, which was a very ancient martial art in their respects, and even things like Hapkido, and things that are starting to step into weapons training and inertia training to try to divert grappling. But still, jiu-jitsu is a great thing to be training under, to learn from. And mixed martial arts is beautiful. I mean, that's what it is. It's like a painter who can use many different mediums, and they're not just acrylic. They can throw oil paint on there. They can use some spray paint. They can use all the different mediums, and I think that's something I actually, when I looked up stuff about Israel, that's something I liked about their culture is that people train. Everybody gets trained. It's a part of being in Israel. You live there. You got to learn. You got to take some military training. And I know that
they focus on Krav Maga.
Right. Yeah. And a great offensive strategy. I mean, I've sparred with a few people in Krav Maga, and I have to say Taekwondo fared me very well. And I was very successful controlling speed and distance where they really needed to close that gap, and they just couldn't.
It's interesting that you say that, because when I sparred with, Taekwondo practitioners, I had a friend who was a Meister in Germany. He was from Korea, and his name was Chuyun, and he was a Meister, and sparring with him, it's and this is a Meister, so this is somebody that mastered speed, mastered distance, and you have to be able to close the distance, or you're just going to be outclassed. You know what I mean? Like if you and not only do you have to be able to close the distance, you have to be effective once you close the distance, or you're just going to be outclassed. One of the things that you see, and it's something that you said too in about kind of maximizing what it is that you're doing, because one of the things that you see, like when I took kung fu, I took a specialized style that only 3 people in the United States are accredited to teach, and the Sifu, my Sifu was a master, and it's Mandarin Kung Fu, 5 Animal Fist, right? But one of the things, like, there were no in our school. First of all, our school was very hard, right? He didn't make a lot of money because, you know, you're not going to find any teenage black belts. Like, he's not doing it. You understand what I'm saying? He's not promoting. You're just not going to find it. You know what I mean? It's a lot of physical training. You know, I didn't throw a punch for the first 6 months. You know, the first few months I'm like, what is this? If I didn't have military discipline, I wouldn't have lasted, because for the first few months it was just horse stance.
Yeah, stances.
Literally,
this was
like,
as an adult, not like as a kid.
yeah, as an adult, it was just horse stance, horse stance, horse stance, horse stance, horse stance, horse. And he used to tell me, he's like, you know, if you were to learn the way I learned in China, he was like, you would be in a horse stance for a lot longer.
Yeah.
Like, you're just going to be in horse stances.
4 to 8 hours.
But what he said to me was something that I always took with me. He said the problem with American martial arts school is that they need to make money, right? So one of the things that gets them notoriety to make money is training students for tournaments.
Right.
Which means you lose technique and you lose form. Because
Americans are also impatient.
training technique and form certainly takes a longer time than training for tournaments. And so it's this refined style.
Yeah, and to touch on that too, Taekwondo specifically focuses on tournament style fighting, but the teacher that I was lucky enough to train under came from Korean military training, and I actually was made to sit and do stancing and do squats to 3 to 4 hours at a time. Yep. While he went through 2 or 3 classes, and I would have to learn how he was teaching while I was doing these squats. And there was points where I would ask, like, you know, hey, can I take a break? And he would say no.
And you know what it's about, right? Yeah, and I learned that, you know, in about my 4th year, because I showed that I was dedicated. It's about submission.
Right.
You know, you're really going to learn what the master, because every master has more to teach than what they're just teaching their class, right? And you're really going to be exposed to that based upon your level of commitment and submission. At least that's what I discovered. Like, I didn't know that there were weapons forms until one day, and 4 years in, you know, my Sifu, Norman Mandarino, he said, you know, come with me. And he took 2 of us and we went into a room and there were all these weapons, you know what I mean? Yeah. And he told me, he was like, you know, these are styles that, you know, not everyone gets to learn. Yeah, you just don't get to learn these things.
You decide your own level of involvement.
Right.
How it works.
That helped me with jujitsu, because when I started taking jujitsu, you know, you pay for most MMA academies, you pay for the class, but you have access to every class that they offer. So I would go every day. I'd go to the advanced classes. I'm a beginner. I'm going to go to the advanced classes. I'm going to get rolled around. I'll just be a body for someone to roll around. You understand what I'm saying? I'd go 6 days a week. I'd go to free roll on Saturday. I'd go to 2 to 3 classes on a, you know, I'd go as often as possible.
And they start off with the fall training, right? Like, you just train how to fall right in the beginning. Isn't that
jiu-jitsu?
Yeah, isn't that a big deal?
The problem with jiu-jitsu, there's an inherent flaw there, so you have to really dedicate yourself, because the problem is, so jiu-jitsu is a I don't know if you ever heard this, because a lot of schools like to do tournaments and win tournaments, so your level of dedication determines your progression, right? Yeah. So I happened to have the privilege and the honor of being in a Jacare Sousa school where all of his teachers have to be black belts, because jiu-jitsu is this martial art that there isn't equality in belts. And what I mean is, every blue belt isn't a blue belt, right? All you have to do is be a high-end blue belt to teach. So there's not as many belts as in most systems. And what I'm getting at is, so you start off as a white belt, right? But you have some people that have been white belts for 3 years and probably should be blue belts. You understand what I'm saying? And it's hard to differentiate because it's based upon your dedication. Some people who have been white belts for 3 years deserve to be white belts for 3 years. They've only come to class 1 day a week. You understand what I'm saying? They haven't really, improved. So they deserve to be white belts for 3 years. But then you have some people like me, like I wasn't a white belt for very long, but you have some people that, oh, the Sifu, or he thinks he's really good. So he might keep him as a white belt so he could put him in tournaments. And this is a 2-year white belt that probably should be a blue belt. And he's going to the tournaments beating up all the white belts because they're like 6-month white belts. You understand what I'm saying? And he should probably be a blue belt. So, these are problems that you face with jiu-jitsu. You have to make sure that you're going to the right school with the right teacher, a teacher that, preferably a black belt, a teacher that is very prejudiced and one, how he decides to promote people, and two, not really concerned about tournaments, so that he promotes people when they're supposed to be promoted. But when you say fall training, my first day, it was, lay on your back, let somebody get between your legs, and you roll until you either sweep them or until you break their guard. Okay. So it was, and that was my first day. So one of the things they say about white belts is, if you're a new white belt, just expect to get beat up. The first thing they tell you is, if you think you're going to go to sleep, tap.
I actually, I had a unique experience where someone kind of challenged me a bit, and I got thrown right into Uki and Tori, the game Uki Tori. And
okay, I'm not familiar with it.
Well, apparently it's this game in jiu-jitsu where there's a Tori, or a defender, and an Uki, who is the assassin, and they try to take down the Tori. So I ended up performing pretty well as a Tori because I just had a natural instinct to use speed and distance to keep hands off me. I got kind of lucky, you could say. And then when I was my turn to be the Uki, again, like, I got kind of lucky in some respect, but it really upset the person, and they didn't really want to continue training with me. I don't, I like to think oh, maybe there was some personal conflict in it, or maybe I did something disrespectful or unorthodox they didn't like, or I don't know.
I can tell you.
Okay.
I can tell you. So one of the problems that I face, and most people face, and as I got on in jiu-jitsu, I realized why people got aggravated. Like, I remember I rolled with somebody, and we on free roll, and I just remember I could see it in his face. He just slammed me hard. And it was because I did something. Like, I remember I grabbed the inside of his gi at the ankle, which you can do, but you shouldn't do, right? And he immediately. So what happens is, so when I first walked into my first class, I was in better shape than everybody in the class physically. While I didn't weigh as much as some people, I was physically, and I was a personal trainer. So I'm running 18 miles a day. I'm doing 2 a day workouts, not weights, body weight, like 2 a days. You know what I'm saying? At least 600 reps, at least. And that's not counting. We're talking 12 to 1500 reps just on core. You know what I mean? So at that time, I was in better shape than everyone. So and people couldn't tell in a gi, right? So in a lot of cases, I would supplement skill for strength, which is a no-no in jiu-jitsu. It's the reason why they go out of their way to roll wrestlers around and put them through pain when wrestlers come in and learn jiu-jitsu, because wrestlers tend to rely on strength rather than technique. It's considered a chess match. So if for some reason you're in one of those situations and you're using, you already have a centered martial arts skill, so you have technique, you have an idea of how a fight should take place. You understand the you like to use the term art, as Bruce Lee described it. You understand the beautiful art that takes place between, because what martial arts is, right, is you're really fighting to control gravity, someone else's center of gravity. You're fighting to be dominant within that center of gravity that you now share. It's like a beautiful dance, as Bruce Lee describes it, when done correctly. So jujitsu really adopts those principles. So when I went in, I was sweeping people based on strength. I can remember times where I'd be on my back and they'd be in my guard, and I'd have my legs wrapped around their waist, and I'd let them pick me up, right? But keep my legs wrapped around their waist, literally. Like I would use strength, and I'd use my body to press your arm in between our two bodies, and then just grab your other arm and force you to the mat. No technique.
Right.
I'm literally just out strengthening you, and people would get pissed, like pissed. And next thing you know, the next person I have to roll with, he's gonna go out of his way to not just sweep me, but sweep me hard. You know what I mean? Like make my chest hit the ground in such a way that I lose oxygen. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I learned. So you might have been doing things that frustrated people because it wasn't jujitsu technique. It was just your technique from, you know, your understanding of fighting.
Right. No, that's very true. I didn't even really think too much about that because my technique was very limited. Later on in life, I learned a little more techniques from actually a coworker, like about the quarter rash, how to manipulate the wrist movements, finger lock holds. But actually, what was really funny is McMaths, the military martial art training stuff. Some of my friends came back home with, and I told them when they left, like, I expect a sparring match when you get back, so like we could see how the different training worked out. And I got to learn this one really unique hold. I'm not really even sure what to call it or how to describe it, but it controls 3 points: a lock on the wrist, the elbow, and the shoulder. And it's supposed to be used like when you're on the ground and somebody's on top of you. But I figured out how to use it while standing as a counterattack to someone after they just pushed me. So like if someone does like a full two-handed push, I figured out how to do this cute little step and lock that actually ended up working out pretty well. But I haven't gotten to train with any well-practiced jujitsu martial artists since my coworker and since the previous friend who got frustrated. So I really haven't had a chance to perfect it much in high resistance, but in some sparring situations, even against someone quite a bit bigger than me, it worked out very famously.
That sounds pretty cool. That sounds pretty cool. See, for me, I have a hybridized technique. I don't, because I know 80% of fights go to the ground, I don't expect to go to the ground. Like, I prefer to strike.
Yeah,
So
me too, yeah. But it happens.
Yeah, it does. I tend to stand in such a way that I have a very small window, right? And you know, if you know anything about striking, like I'm never going to strike outside of my window, which means outside of the width of my shoulders, right? I'm not striking outside of that area.
You're
That
not
doesn't mean
leaving
that.
a limb.
Right. Like I'm never, because I'm always wary of those, one, who know judo, or two, understand jujitsu. And if you get a hold of my limb, you understand what I'm saying?
Boxing helped me with that window you're talking about.
Yeah, the fight window. Boxing is
Yeah.
that's the reason why it's called the sweet science. Because if you understand boxing, or especially Thai fighting, you definitely understand how to. And so I'll stand at an angle. I mean, my legs will be, you know, facing you, but my body will be at like a 45-degree half turn. So I completely, and you know, I'm not big, so I can make my window even smaller. You see what I'm saying? And I fight within that window. And if you're gonna strike me effectively outside of like a kick, you have to get into that window. You understand what I'm saying? That's
I
just
can see that.
outside of a kick. You understand what I'm saying? Like, kicks are, you know, that's one of the reasons why, you know, Taekwondo is super, 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 it's specialized but so proficient, because it's a leg style. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, they're striking, but it certainly emphasizes, you know, the leg. It's a leg style.
Though they don't really succeed much in the octagon area. Karate was actually pretty successful. I forget the guy's name, but Taekwondo doesn't really hold up tournament style fighting in those rings. That's why I started doing the
You're
boxing.
talking about Lyoto Machida.
Lyoto Machida, is that it? It was.
Yeah.
Yeah, they considered him an older fighter, but he had this really good karate style stance work that helped him capitalize on a lot of sloppy fighters. And I like that because it gave me kind of like, you know what, it's good that I still have this fundamental core background. And you know, I have a few things working against me as far as entering rings, though they may let me, atrial septal defect and damages to my lungs from being collapsed on impact and some hazardous work site material. but like working through those and training extra hard to keep those conditions like, as tip top as possible. I feel that they may let me do some entry level fighting, and I'm excited about that possibility.
Oh, you like to get into the cage?
Yeah, I would like to get involved in stuff. One guy I was talking to, it's all about having the gym, having the people that support you. You can't just walk in as an independent fighter. They're telling me all these other things, and I mean, I don't know how it's gonna be, but I'm gonna keep training for it. I let some time go. I let a few weeks go, but then I hit it hard again. I fluctuate a bit between work, but I think it's a part of my everyday life. Training, it's a lifestyle. It's an art. It's a part of my it's part of my body. Like my body is the art, and martial arts is a way to discipline that. Actually, trees have been very helpful for training. So I get a very funny rap for that. Even in some cases where someone would think I'm hugging a tree, I'm actually training some grappling techniques with some local trees nearby that provide a great body of resistance. Obviously, it's not much damage I could do to a tree trying to grapple it or striking with it. But a couple of things, and I did learn from that other friend in jiu-jitsu, certain striking points on the arm to help build up strength in the radius and ulna and to handle hits. But using trees has been helpful. So I don't know. Yeah, gym would be good
Let
to
me
get
just
involved
jump in by saying that I totally misinterpreted you saying using trees. I
Yeah.
totally had the
She
wrong
thought you meant
meaning
weed.
in my
She
head.
thought you meant weed.
Well, medicine can be helpful too, especially for recovering. But yeah, no, legitimately, trees are great partners. Shadow boxing is good for what it does, cardio-wise, but there's a certain endurance and a certain quality to striking and strike targeting that trees, especially like what you might call a weeded tree, or a tree that is like, kind of growing amongst the weeds. I know there's another weed reference a little bit, but like, it's hard to explain. That's something more to show. We're actually talking about a lot of physical behavioral stuff. That's probably hard to, for someone to really get behind what we're talking about, because a lot of it is very visual and hands-on.
So it's
Either of you
interesting
ever
because
use
I don't.
the wooden dummies that you see in the movies? The wooden.
I mean,
I didn't
we
need
had him in
wooden
Kung Fu.
dummies because I had lesser people to wrestle around the white belts and stuff like that.
Yeah, we had him in class in my Kung Fu school.
Oh, okay.
I think what you're describing though, and I'm not sure because I've never taken Taekwondo, so I don't know the basis of the form, right? Like, so you have in Kung Fu, you have what's called hard and soft. Five Animal Fist was very much isometric. So the forms would make you tired. Like the forms will make you sweat. And
Correct.
I think when you're doing when you're using trees, for instance, I think that's very much isometric, right? You're putting stress on your muscle groups,
Correct.
when you're
I think
training.
that's
You know what I mean?
exactly the word for how I use trees as partners in training, and to get different angles and to get different strike angles. Oftentimes in some street fights I've been in, you don't really have the perfect strike zone. And so what I learned to do was how to get full fiber recruitment by using.
Well, because your opponent isn't going to get in a cat stance, right? You know what I mean? And do it the way it's,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, go on.
No, but exactly that is that it's unpredictable, especially a drunk fighter. You don't really know how they're coming in or what they're thinking. So, even boxing, like I can't really expect to square up. So doing unorthodox form training, using trees, creating an isometric pressure with a tree that's kind of an unusual punch. So like actually Sistema speaks a lot about this. I've learned a lot from watching a few videos about Sistema that I might recommend anyone to look that
Sistema is
up.
Russian, Damien?
Correct, yes. It's
Yes.
Russian martial art. It's not very commonly practiced, though it's getting a little more common. There was also another Russian martial art that was banned just because it's simply focused on a very offensive, very brutal style that I can't
Sambo?
necessarily recommend. Sambo, yeah, I think that was it actually. But it was just, it was too violent, I suppose. There's been other things, like Taekyon was kind of a like banished martial art from Korea. It was a very dancey style martial art. But what happened is all the combos kind of end with a tripping technique, and you're expected to stomp your opponent on the ground in many of these combos. So teaching people to finish a fight, but ultimately debilitating their opponent, didn't really fare well. In fact, ancient practitioners of Tekion were eventually hunted down and killed one by one, except for one guy who lived a peaceful life in the mountains and lived to teach the technique on to other Koreans who would peacefully come to the mountains in peace. Because remember, martial artists were peacemakers at the time. And though Tekion was a very effective, powerful fighting style, because it would like maim and damage people who would live to tell the tale, but would also like hire assassins to kill the guy that crippled him, Tekion kind of became a quiet, under the rug, in the shadows, up into the mountain martial art.
Well,
And,
only one portion or percentage, a certain percentage of martial arts in China specifically was for peace.
Oh.
Like you had so many different styles, and all of those styles or forms were based upon like environment. Like you had styles that were meant for war. You had long forms and short forms because, you know, we don't live in the country, we live in the city. So we're going to create a short form of martial arts that's designed to fight, you know, on the streets, in alleyways or what have you. We're going to create a long form because we kind of live in open area, countryside, you know what I mean? So, you know, outside of like, say, Shaolin Temple Kung Fu or what have you, you certainly had people who were using martial arts as a means of, you know, active combat against a regime or another.
Yeah, that's why I liked Wing Chun a little bit too, and learning about that history was because it took advantages that women and children could use, and also took some stuff from farming culture, and kind of made it so like the average everyday person could possibly fend off an otherwise difficult.
Like Tai Chi.
Well, Tai Chi is another, you know, what a curious art form Tai Chi is, where it focuses on the body as a breathing machine and helps kind of build up form for the exchange or flow of energy. And I definitely do respect and appreciate Tai Chi for what it is. Though
That's what I would have trained in had I known better. I really I also have a deep respect of Tai Chi. Because some of the best fighters I ever saw with my good eyes is basically Tai Chi masters.
Used to be ridiculed as the woman style.
Yeah, it shouldn't be, because they can really kick your ass if you're not paying attention.
Oh yeah, it should not be, but it's a style that women can be very proficient in. It's said that a woman created the style, but it's certainly a style that women can be very proficient in.
Wait, are you talking Tai Chi or Wing Chun?
Both.
I'm talking Tai Chi.
Yeah, both were actually made.
Speaking of women, this might have to become a sausage fest because I gotta go to bed.
Yeah, no, this is getting late. It's almost 2 in the morning.
Yeah, I'm gonna get ready to go too. I just want to say there are a few styles that are specifically, like when I was taking Kung Fu, right? Like Dragon style is a style, like if somebody who was, you know, a senior citizen came into class, that's what they would learn. You know,
Good night, Emily.
It's the easiest form to learn. It's definitely you can definitely become proficient in it, but you're not going to teach a senior citizen Tiger style, which is predominantly strikes. Even their blocks are strikes. You know, somebody who's a mesomorph, who's big and strong, is going to be proficient and learn like Tiger style Kung Fu. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like even their blocks are strikes.
Yeah, something that probably goes overlooked is that body style does play a role in the dynamics of fighting. And if you can learn to use your bodily advantages instead of trying to, it's like, you know, you can't have the fish climb the tree. I referenced that a little bit earlier, but like, you know, if you're the fish, you got to put yourself in water. And that's why self-defense is really the focus, because if I am a fish, then I'm in the water. I can't jump out of the water to go attack a bird, you know? The bird has to come to my pond, and then I can use my fish jitsu or whatever I'm going to do. So like the whole thing,
I feel a story coming on, Damien.
no. Just it's just about being able to work with what you have, who you are.
Right,
And,
right. No, I totally agree.
yeah,
People fight their bodies when doing any of the martial arts, and you really shouldn't. I was never going to be good at Taekwondo, and the reason is I have short legs and I'm a wide built body. I couldn't kick to save my life, but the things I did learn, I learned boxing and wrestling and Aikido, which is all upper body, not strength based, but positional based. And even the boxing is really had very little to do with strength and had a lot to do with just making sure that your feet were in proper positions every time you struck and defended yourself. Yeah, because the power comes from the earth, and that was the and for not being a very spiritual man, my boxing coach was fairly spiritual about what he believed the sweet science was.
It's interesting. Boxing teach you core principles, right?
Absolutely.
Like it definitely is one art form. Most martial arts, right? Your power comes from your core. And in boxing is the best example of that, right? Like by virtue of training, they don't even have to tell you. They just train you in such a way that you use your core to generate power. You would based upon your physical description and dimensions, you would make an excellent tiger practitioner. You know what I mean? Like that's
I've heard that.
Yeah, if you were to walk into my class, my teacher would absolutely make you learn every form, but he would focus. It's just a form dance, right? Like I think dragon form is the longest form dance, but it's literally just a form dance. You would learn every form, but he would have you focus as a tiger practitioner because of your build and your dimensions. He would assess that. Like with me, he was like, you're panther practitioner. I absolutely, in my 4th year, he started training me in snake. You see what I'm saying? So then I trained snake in panther I trained snake for 6 years and I trained panther for 10. The last 6 years of the 10, I was taking snake as well. I became very proficient because, he only had 5 of us who were taking snake, and he was like, you have the build. And snake is just a hard form to learn to use. It's an awesome form. It's a hard form to learn effectively. So in most cases, they're going to want you to learn another form so you understand, the martial art, and then they'll overlay it with something. It's a very proficient form, very deadly, very dangerous. It's just hard to learn effectively. If you just go to a school and decide you're going to take snake style, you're going to just get beat up. Because I mean, on the street, you're just going to get beat up. It's very hard to learn effectively.
And it probably in class too.
Yeah, there's a physical requirement. The katas are like stupid, right? Like we stayed in girl step and long form katas. You know what I mean? Where you almost have to do splits. You understand what I'm saying? Like the katas are just, and you have to have some. It's physical, so you already have to have some understanding of technique. You see what I'm saying? Before you even begin to get into that. And he didn't really teach anybody crane, because his physical build, while he knew crane and we learned the form, his physical build, he couldn't, and he was a master, he couldn't adequately teach crane. He used to say all the time,
somebody else.
He would say all the time, crane is 60% dance. And it's such a specialized form. The crane doesn't like to be touched. Right. So it's like this, it's such a specialized form that it's very hard to learn. Very hard. It's effective, but it's very hard to learn.
Hey, speaking of long form, I just want to remark that tonight was, we had an incredibly diverse body of work tonight. It would be like hard for someone to recognize that we filmed all of this in the same night, because we went everywhere from comic books to like politics to schools, now to martial arts. It's a very very diverse body of work tonight.
Eclectic for sure.
Yeah,
That's a lot very eclectic. I mean, this is something you're going to edit, chop up, stream, print. How does your work go for this? I'm interested.
Yeah, I mean, I've got some my version of editing is kind of a barbaric chopping up of what we did. I'm still learning, but what we did tonight was kind of smart in that Emily was letting us use her long form Zoom, which means we didn't have to, get kicked out of Zoom every 4 minutes, which
40
every
minutes.
40 minutes, sorry, which we would have if we were using my Zoom account. Because as soon as you get over 2 people on a show, it just like only lets you do 40 segment free episodes. So since we use hers, we just on the hour or thereabouts, I would just press stop and then start again. So it'll make it easier for me to edit the episodes because they'll already be chopped up.
I just want to add to this that there's 2 shows, right? Mike and myself have a show called On That Ish, which you were on yesterday, Damien.
Yeah, that's
and then
subject matter.
And then we have this group show that we do, on Fridays, or when we just have a whim, when we just on a whim, we have some topics that we're talking about in the messenger group, which I think you've been invited to and are a part of. So when we just have some good conversations or what have you, we might just be like, let's do a show. And then we have Emily and she'll, start up a show, and here we are. You know what I'm saying? I wanted to say, because I'm going to get ready to go, so I just wanted to give some final words. I'm so appreciative that the 2 of you are here. I think it's awesome, and it's been enlightening, and I'm hopeful that we'll have you with us as often as possible. I'm sure every time we send a link will go to you guys. You know what I mean?
And I would love that.
Yeah, for sure. Raul, make sure if I don't send you a friend request tonight, make sure you friend request
I already
me.
did. I already did,
cool.
sir.
Cool. I appreciate that. I also just want to say we do have the show On That Ish, and I welcome you both, to come on and participate. You know what I mean? That's more specialized. You know what I mean? It's a thing that like me and Mike do exclusively, and we kind of choose, who we're going to have on and when we're going to have them on, and what we're going to talk about. You know what I mean? So I definitely would like to invite you onto that as well. You know what I mean? I don't like to really reference this one as On That Ish, because I don't want to establish any type of proprietorship over it when there's so many people and so many diverse opinions. You know what I mean? And I think that I like that this for what it is. You know what I mean? So, but I definitely have this. Me and Mike, we definitely have a specific show as well On That Ish that we also bring people on.
And yeah, that would be great fun for me. I'm sure Damien feels the same way.
Damien was on yesterday.
Oh, then he already knows.
Yeah, we'll send you a link so you can check it out. And these, I'll I'll do these up as soon as I can, hopefully by tomorrow around this time, or maybe even much earlier. I'll have at least some of these, I guess, 5 episodes we probably did tonight up. And please, hit subscribe, like, /
Did we lose Sam?
Yeah. / spread them to your network so we can get as many views as possible.
Yeah.
And everyone out there that's listening, thumb up or thumb down. Just thumb. Definitely thumb.
Use your
subscribe.
Yeah.
Yes.
I like that this was like it was like hanging out. It was as if we all just called up to chill for a bit.
Definitely.
And, like so when we can focus on content, that's really cool too. So we don't get too lost in the sauce, so to speak.
Definitely.
And really appreciate you guys considering me for some of these talks. They do help a lot, talking in real time instead of me always typing and sending messages with people.
Sure.
And I appreciate it because I've talked with other people who do these shows or these casts or these sessions, let's call them. And sometimes my content gets very dense and it intimidates them, and they don't really want to have me on their show. So I really want to express gratitude and appreciation for being able to share in these capacities and letting me kind of absorb some of this information you guys are going through. And then I get to kind of repurpose a lot of that insight and add to the density of, what it is I'm taking in, because I'm kind of under a rock with a lot of this stuff. I know I mentioned that a little bit. I get lost in these wormholes. In fact, some of the studies that I was doing just recently, trying to figure out more stuff about Israel, I mean, like I said, I got lost in some crazy rabbit-sized wormholes, and I ended up making this big note, and I knew, like, okay, like a lot of the stuff isn't really made for this content, but I'm going to actually put that note separately and print it. I mean, I'll reference it to you to let you know, because it's something that you essentially inspired me to look further into, because you suggested some of this content, and I really appreciate that. Like I said, without these little leads, little inspirations, little motivations, I mean, my drive could get a little lost. Like, I'm happy training and doing art and poetry, and then all of a sudden, next thing you know it, I've missed all these current events, and the world is on fire, and there's a lot of stuff to be put out. So I appreciate that water and the ability for us to bear that water and put these fires out.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks so much for showing up and for adding to the content. You guys were great for the show. So that's what we're all about.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Right. So
you want to give some final words, Raul?
Oh, going after Damien makes me feel like I'm a dummy. So he's so good. You're so good, Damien. You're so bright. It's hard to follow you up, brother. Seriously.
Yeah, I would concede that. I want to say to both of you, and you'll hear me say this if you see me on Facebook, in many cases, especially when it comes to politics, I have no problem conceding that I get a lot of my education filtered through people who are more wired that way, rather than just the news or what have you. So I'm very inquisitive. I'll post things on Facebook and I'll ask questions, you know what I mean, and it's usually because I'm trying to draw on or gain perspective from people that I know that are have an ear to the street on these things, so to speak. And I just want to say again how appreciative I am that the two of you are on some level willing to be a part of this, because it's just another avenue for me to be able to, educate myself, to, draw on perspective and gain information from people who seem to have, very, very, very brilliant insights and, strong perspective. So thank you.
Hey, thank you for adding to my sense of the world too, guys. I mean, we're all different people, and I think that can only lead to a better understanding of the world around us when we understand each other.
Absolutely.
Agreed.
Word. Until next time, folks. So yeah, be on the lookout for some communication, and until next time when we're on that ish.
Definitely,
all right.
Definitely. You guys take care.
Everybody
right.
take care.
You will.
All right, peace.
Good dreams, you guys.